Okay, let's unpack this. We live in a world where there's just so much noise. And honestly, some pretty unrealistic ideas flying around about sex.
Oh, definitely.
Especially, how long it's supposed to last. You see it everywhere, media, online whispers. It creates this pressure that's just, well, not helpful.
It really isn't. That pressure sort of glorifying certain times, it sets expectations that might just not match reality. And it can make people feel inadequate.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, our mission is pretty simple. Cut through all that noise. Let's look at some actual data.
Real numbers?
Yeah. We're diving into this source. It's a urologist presenting findings from a study. They actually timed penetrative intercourse in, 500 couples?
500 couples, yeah. Around the world, they were comparing perception versus the timed reality.
Okay, but it's crucial, right? Before we get into the numbers, how did they define sex or intercourse for this study?
Right, good point. So they specifically timed from the very start of penetration right up until ejaculation. The technical term is intra-ejaculatory latency time, IELT.
IELT. Got it. So just to be crystal clear for everyone listening, that definition doesn't include foreplay at all?
No, purely duration of penetration for the study's purpose.
Okay. And that's how they measured it. Doesn't mean that's how you define sex in your life. And the source makes this really important point up front, doesn't he?
He really does, that no matter what any data says, the number one thing for you and your partner is communication. Talking about expectations, what you both enjoy.
What feels good.
Mutual satisfaction, basically.
Exactly. Connection, pleasure. That's way more important than, a stopwatch.
For sure. But okay, let's look at this data, because the gap between what people think happens and what they actually timed is, well, it's pretty striking.
It is. So first, what did men think was the ideal length? Like in polls the source mentioned.
Right. The poll suggested men estimate the ideal is around 16 minutes. 16.
Okay. And what did they think the actual average was? Like, what did they guess people usually last?
They guessed about 9 minutes on average. Okay, 16 ideal, 9 perceived average. Now, here's where the study's time data comes in. These 500 couples, they used a stopwatch every time for a month.
Okay, drum roll. The actual timed average IELT they found across everyone.
5.7 minutes.
Wow, just 5.7. That's quite a difference from 9 and definitely from 16.
A big difference. But what's also fascinating, the source highlights this, is the range they saw. It wasn't like everyone is clustered around 5.7.
Right. It varied a lot.
Wildly. From as low as like 0.1 minutes, basically seconds, all the way up to roughly 55 minutes.
Whoa, 0.1 to 55 minutes. That's an incredible spectrum.
Yeah.
Did the source mention anything about why such a huge range or like differences between groups?
They did note some interesting geographic differences. For instance, couples in Turkey had the lowest average IELT in the study, around 4.4 minutes.
Okay.
Whereas couples in the UK had the longest average, closer to 10 minutes.
Huh. Interesting. So maybe cultural factors or something else plays a role.
Could be. The source didn't delve super deep into the why there, but noted the variation.
All right, so we've got the perception 16 and 9 minutes, the timed average 5.7 minutes, the huge range, regional differences. What about what partners want? Did the source touch on desired length?
Yeah, they mentioned a big website poll, not a scientific study like the timing one, but a poll of like 4,000 women.
What did that suggest?
It suggested an average desired length for penetration was around 25 minutes.
25, okay. But again, that's a poll, not the time study.
Yeah.
And desires vary massively person to person, right?
Exactly. The source was careful to point that out. Highly variable, just like the actual timed durations.
So, okay, bringing it back to you listening.
Yeah.
Why does knowing this stuff matter? Why is that 5.7 minute average potentially helpful?
Well, understanding that the actual timed average is 5.7 minutes can really help manage expectations if you or your partner feel pressure because you think it should be 15, 20 minutes.
Because of movies or whatever.
Right. Knowing the reality, the data, can take off a lot of that unnecessary stress. It kind of reframes what's statistically normal.
But the key message from the source is still
That mutual satisfaction and pleasure are the most important things, not hitting some number on a clock.
that's the big takeaway, isn't it? Focus on the connection, not the stopwatch.
Absolutely. And the source also mentioned, if you're having genuine difficulties with duration lasting too short a time, or even longer than you'd like,
There are resources.
yeah, see a urologist, maybe a sex therapist. They even mentioned another video they did about it, apparently sparked by a certain Sex and the City scene.
Huh? Yeah.
But, this whole discussion, especially that 5.7 average, it does raise an interesting thought, doesn't it?
What's that?
Given that huge range, they found seconds up to nearly an hour, and how much the source stressed communication and individual satisfaction.
How truly useful is a single average number like 5.7 minutes anyway?
Yeah,
In the context of a real personal relationship.
exactly. What does it suggest about where our focus really ought to be? On hitting averages, or on the quality of the connection and the actual pleasure you share?